A massive council chamber on Nexus Prime hummed with worried voices. 12 different alien species sat around the giant circular table, their various forms casting strange shadows under the bright lights. Ambassador Kelthera from the Vorthic Empire stood at the center, her 4 arms moving as she spoke to the holographic display floating above them. "The situation grows worse by the hour," Kelthera said, her voice carrying the weight of concern. The display showed a map of local space, with a large red sphere marking the area around Earth. "The quarantine zone remains in effect, but we have a serious problem." The other ambassadors shifted in their seats. Some had tentacles instead of arms, others had scales instead of skin, but they all looked worried. The quarantine zone around Earth had been in place for 200 years, ever since first contact with the humans had gone terribly wrong. Council leader Zephyros, a tall being made of what looked like living crystal, activated another display. "Tell them about the humans." Kelthera. "Some of our newer members may not know the full story." Kelthera nodded and touched a control. The display changed to show old video files from 2 centuries ago. Grainy images of human ships appeared, looking rough and dangerous compared to the smooth, elegant vessels used by other species. The humans achieved faster than light travel in the worst possible way, Kelthera explained. While our civilization spent thousands of years developing safe, efficient ships through careful research and cooperation, the humans tore their way into space in just decades. They left behind a trail of destroyed test ships and dangerous experiments. The video showed human vessels that looked more like weapons than exploration ships. They were covered in armor plating and bristled with defensive systems. Where other species built ships that looked like works of art, humans built them like fortresses. "They called it trial and error," continued Kelthera. "We call it reckless endangerment. When we made first contact, they refused to submit their technology for safety evaluation. They would not follow proper diplomatic procedures. They seemed aggressive and unpredictable." Ambassador Thylix from the Silicon Collective, whose body appeared to be made of flowing metal, spoke up. "The term we use in our files is feral predators. They developed space travel through violence and destruction rather than peaceful scientific progress." "Exactly," Kelthera agreed. "Rather than risk a war with such an unpredictable species, the Galactic Council agreed to voluntary quarantine. The humans accepted isolation, and we have maintained a safe distance ever since." The other ambassadors nodded in agreement. Everyone knew the story. Humans were dangerous, unpredictable, and best left alone in their corner of space. It was better for everyone that way. Suddenly, an urgent alarm sounded throughout the chamber. A communication screen activated, showing the panicked face of Captain Melody Song from the research vessel Harmony's Light. She was one of the peaceful Etherian species, her translucent blue skin showing the stress patterns that indicated extreme fear. "Mayday, mayday," Captain Song's voice crackled through the speakers. "This is the Harmony's Light requesting immediate assistance. We are trapped by an unknown automated defense system. Our shields are failing, and we are losing life support." The council chamber fell silent. The Harmony's Light was one of their most important research vessels, carrying 300 of the galaxy's brightest scientists. They had been studying ancient ruins near the edge of Andromeda space, searching for clues about the mysterious precursor civilization that had once ruled the galaxy. Council leader Zephyros stepped forward. "Captain Song, what is your exact situation?" "We discovered an ancient defense network that activated when we approached the ruins," Captain Song replied, her image flickering as interference disrupted the signal. "The automated platforms are using weapons we have never seen before. They are learning from our attempts to escape and adapting their attacks. We estimate 6 hours before complete system failure." Zephyros turned to the other ambassadors. "We must organize a rescue mission immediately." Who can respond? What followed was a series of excuses that grew more elaborate by the minute. Ambassador Kelthera was the first to speak. The Vorthic Imperial Fleet is currently positioned 3 sectors away, she said. Even at maximum speed, our ships would take 18 hours to reach the Harmony's light. By then, it will be too late. The Silicon Collective's representative flowed into a new shape that indicated regret. Our vessels are designed for efficiency, not speed. We calculate a 22-hour travel time to the crisis zone. Ambassador Weeping Tide from the Aquatic. Alliance made a sound like rushing water. Our ships require constant moisture recycling. We cannot maintain life support for our crews during the extended vacuum travel required for this mission. One by one, each species found reasons why they could not help. Some claimed their ships were too slow. Others said their crews were not trained for combat situations. A few admitted they simply did not have vessels capable of fighting unknown weapons. But there was another reason that none of them wanted to say out loud. The crisis zone was uncomfortably close to the human quarantine area. To reach the Harmony's light in time, any rescue ship would have to travel near or through the edge of human space. None of the civilized species wanted to risk an encounter. With the unpredictable human's dot, as the debate continued, Captain Song's transmissions became weaker. The Harmony's light was dying, and the greatest minds in the galaxy were dying with it. Yet the Galactic Council, with all their advanced technology and peaceful wisdom, could do nothing to help. Meanwhile, far from the council chambers, Captain Liu Wei stood on the bridge of the human exploration vessel Defiant. He was a stocky man with graying hair and scars on his hands from years of working with dangerous machinery. His ship patrolled the edge of the quarantine zone, making sure no human vessels accidentally violated the agreement with the Galactic Council. The Defiant was exactly what the aliens feared human ships would look like. It was built like a weapon, with thick armor plating and redundant systems. Where alien ships had elegant curves and efficient designs, the Defiant looked like it had been built to survive a war. Lieutenant Commander Adams, a young woman with short brown hair, looked up from her communication station. "Captain, I'm picking up a distress signal on the emergency frequencies." "Put it through," Liu Wei ordered. Captain Song's desperate voice filled the bridge. "Mayday, mayday. This is the Harmony's light requesting immediate assistance. We are trapped by an unknown automated defense system." Liu Wei listened to the full message, then studied the star charts on his screen. The crisis location was marked in red, showing it was outside the quarantine zone, but dangerously close to it. His navigation officer, Jake Murphy, was already running calculations. "Captain, we could reach them in 8 hours if we pushed the engines." "Past safety limits," Murphy reported. "But we would be violating the quarantine agreement by leaving our patrol zone." Liu Wei stared at the star chart for a long moment. His crew of 45 volunteers watched him, waiting for orders. They were the kind of humans the galaxy feared most: former military personnel, asteroid miners, deep space salvage operators, and others who had chosen the dangerous frontier life over the safety of Earth's inner colonies. "Sir," Adams spoke. "Up quietly. The Galactic Council frequencies are full of chatter. None of their ships can reach the crisis zone in time. Those people are going to die if someone doesn't help them." Liu Wei made his decision with the speed that would terrify other species who preferred long discussions and careful planning. "Murphy, set course for the Harmony's light. Adams, send a message to Earth Command informing them of our actions. Rodriguez, I want the engines ready to exceed safety parameters." "Sir." His chief engineer Rodriguez called from her station. Leaving the quarantine zone could bring the entire galaxy's wrath down on humanity. Earth Command specifically ordered us to avoid any actions that might be seen as aggressive. Liu Wei nodded grimly. "I understand the risks. But there are 300 people dying out there, and we have a ship fast enough to reach them. That's all that matters." As the Defiant changed course and began accelerating toward the crisis zone, Liu Wei wondered if he was making the right choice. His ship and crew might be starting the very conflict that the quarantine was designed to prevent. But his reasoning was simple and purely human. People were dying, and he could help them. Everything else was just politics. The Defiant raced through space at speeds that would make alien engineers panic. Chief Engineer Rodriguez had pushed the ship's fusion drives 30% beyond their normal safety limits, and the entire vessel shook with barely controlled power. Warning lights flashed red throughout the ship, but the crew ignored them with the casual attitude that had terrified the galaxy for 2 centuries. "Engine efficiency at 140%, Rodriguez called out from her station. "We're burning through fuel reserves faster than planned, but we'll make it to the crisis zone with enough left for the return trip." Captain Liu Wei nodded without taking his eyes off the star charts. "How long until we reach them?" Navigator Jake Murphy checked his calculations again. 7 hours and 30 minutes at current speed. The automated distress beacon from the Harmony's light is getting weaker, which means their power systems are failing faster than expected. Lieutenant Commander Adams looked up from her communication station with a troubled expression. "Captain, I've been monitoring galactic communication channels. The chatter is interesting." "What kind of chatter?" Liu Wei asked. Adams activated the main screen, showing intercepted transmissions from various alien species. The Galactic Council is still debating what to do, but more importantly, they're talking about us. They know we left the quarantine zone. The bridge crew listened as Adams played back translated conversations between different alien civilizations. The content was disturbing. Species after species expressed fear and anger that humans had violated their isolation agreement. Some called it an act of war. Others wondered if the humans were using the crisis as an excuse to expand their territory. "They think we're planning to attack them," Adams continued. "The Vorthic Empire has put 3 battle fleets on high alert. The Silicon Collective is preparing defensive measures around their core worlds." Dr. Susan Clark, the ship's xenobiologist, shook her head in disgust. "They would rather let 300 innocent people die than risk contact with us." "What kind of advanced civilization thinks like that?" "The kind that has never faced real danger," Liu Wei replied grimly. "Adams, what else are they saying about us?" Adams pulled up more intercepted communications. "This is where it gets really interesting, Captain. They're sharing information about first contact 2 centuries ago. Apparently, they have detailed files on why they consider us dangerous." The main screen showed alien text with human translations appearing below. The crew read in growing amazement as they learned how the galaxy really saw them. According to galactic records, humans were classified as a catastrophic anomaly in normal civilization development. Most species took thousands of years to develop. Space travel, doing so through careful cooperation and peaceful scientific advancement. They built their first starships like delicate scientific instruments, designed for exploration and discovery. Humans had torn their way into space in just decades through what the aliens called destructive experimentation, where other species tested their technology carefully and safely. Humans had launched themselves into the void with ships that exploded regularly and crews that died frequently. The aliens could not understand how a species could advance so quickly while losing so many lives in the process. "Listen to this part," Adams said, highlighting a section of text. "They say our first contact protocols were completely wrong. When their diplomats approached us, we refused to submit our technology for safety evaluation. We demanded to know why they wanted to inspect our ships. We asked questions about their weapons and defensive capabilities." Murphy laughed bitterly. "Of course we asked about their weapons. Any sane military would want to know what kind of firepower they were facing. But they don't think like military, Dr. Clark pointed out. Most of these species haven't fought wars in thousands of years. To them, asking about weapons capabilities was a sign of aggressive intent. The intercepted communications revealed more disturbing details. The aliens had been particularly frightened by human ship designs. Where their vessels were elegant and efficient, human ships looked like weapons platforms. The Defiant itself was a perfect example. Thick armor plating, redundant defensive systems, and enough firepower to fight a small war. They're terrified of our engineering philosophy, Rodriguez said, reading over the technical assessments. Look at this analysis of human fusion drives. They call our power systems dangerously overpowered and our safety margins criminally inadequate. Because we build things to work when everything goes wrong, Lu Wei replied. They build for perfect conditions. We build for disasters. Adams found another section that made the crew pause. Captain, this explains why they agreed to the quarantine. So easily. They thought we were too dangerous to be allowed near other civilizations. But they were also afraid that trying to contain us by force would start a war they couldn't win. So they offered us voluntary isolation, Dr. Clark said. And our government agreed because they thought it would be temporary. A chance to prove we weren't hostile. 200 years later, we're still proving it, Lu Wei said grimly. The ship's sensors began detecting something that changed everything. Lieutenant Sarah Knox, the tactical officer, studied her displays with growing concern. Captain, long-range sensors are picking up the crisis zone. I'm reading massive energy signatures, consistent with the automated defense network that trapped the Harmony's light. The main screen shifted to show sensor data from the target area. What they saw made even the experienced human crew pause in amazement. Dozens of massive structures floated in space, each one the size of a small city. They moved in perfect formation around a single point where the Etherian research vessel was trapped. Those are the automated defense platforms. Knox continued. Ancient technology, but still active. They're using weapons I've never seen before, some kind of exotic energy that seems to bend space itself. Dr. Clark studied the readings with growing excitement and fear. These are precursor artifacts. The civilization that built them disappeared millions of years ago, but their technology is still more advanced than anything the current galaxy has achieved. What kind of weapons are we talking about? Lu Wei asked. Knox ran the data through the ship's tactical computers. The energy signatures suggest they can manipulate matter at the quantum level. The Harmony's light's hull is literally being dissolved atom by atom. Their shields are holding for now, but the platforms are learning from each attack and adapting their weapons accordingly. Murphy plotted their approach vector and discovered another problem. Captain, the defense platforms have positioned themselves to cover all normal escape routes. Any rescue ship would have to punch through their perimeter, grab the Etherian vessel, and fight their way back out. How long do the Etherians have? Lu Wei asked. Based on the rate of hull degradation, maybe. 4 hours, Knox replied. But that's assuming the platforms don't adapt their weapons further. If they figure out how to penetrate the Harmony's light shields completely, it could be much less. Rodriguez studied the technical data from the trapped ship. Captain, there's something else. The Harmony's light is a pure research vessel. It has almost no defensive capabilities and no weapons at all. The Etherians never expected to face a combat situation. Because they never face combat situations, Dr. Clark added. The Etherian species hasn't fought a war in over 10,000 years. They don't even have a concept of military tactics. Lu Wei stared at the sensor displays, calculating the odds of success. The automated defense network was using technology beyond anything in the current galaxy. The platforms were learning and adapting with each passing hour. The trapped research vessel was defenseless and running out of time. Any sane military commander would call for reinforcements, develop a careful plan, and approach the situation with overwhelming force. But the Galactic Council fleets were still hours away, and the Etherians would be dead long before help arrived. Adams, any change in the galactic communications? Lu Wei asked. No, sir. They're still debating what to do. The latest estimate is that they'll have a rescue plan ready in 18 hours. 18 hours too late. Lu Wei muttered. He looked around his bridge at the crew that had volunteered for this mission. They were the kind of humans the galaxy feared, people who had chosen the dangerous frontier life, who faced the unknown with determination rather than fear. They had families back on Earth, people who loved them and wanted them to come home safely. But they also had something the galaxy had never understood, the ability to risk everything for strangers. All hands, this is the captain, Lu Wei announced. Over the ship's communication system. We're approaching a combat situation against technology that outclasses anything we've ever faced. The odds of survival are not good. Anyone who wants to transfer to escape pods and wait for pickup has 5 minutes to decide. The bridge crew looked at each other and then back at their captain. Not one of them moved toward the exits. 5 minutes. Later, Lu Wei's voice echoed through the ship again. Apparently, we're all staying. Knox, prepare all weapon systems. Rodriguez, I want every bit of power you can give me. Murphy, plot us a course straight through their perimeter. Straight. Through, sir? Murphy asked. The Defiant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the crisis zone, and the sight that greeted them was worse than anyone had imagined. 47 massive automated defense platforms floated in perfect formation around the trapped harmonies. Light. Each platform was the size of a city, covered in weapon arrays that pulsed with energy that seemed to bend light itself. Dear God, whispered Navigator Jake Murphy, staring at the tactical display. Those things are huge. Lieutenant Sarah Knox ran the sensor data through her computers and felt her blood turn cold. Captain, each platform is generating more power than our entire ship. Their weapons are using some kind of exotic energy that treats advanced alien armor like paper. In the center of the formation, the Harmony's light looked like a wounded animal surrounded by predators. The beautiful crystalline hull of the Etherian research vessel was slowly dissolving under constant bombardment from weapons that attacked matter at the quantum level. Parts of the ship simply faded away as if they had never existed. How long? Do they have? Captain Lu Wei asked. Maybe 2 hours, Knox replied. The platforms are learning faster than we expected. Each attack is more effective than the last one. Chief Engineer Rodriguez studied the energy readings with growing concern. Captain, these weapons are beyond anything in our databases. They're not just shooting energy beams, they're actually changing the fundamental structure of matter itself. Dr. Susan Clark pointed to another section of the display. Look at the platform positions. They're not random. The formation is designed to cover every possible escape route. Any ship trying to reach the Harmony's light would have to fight through multiple layers of defense. Lu Wei studied the tactical situation with the cold calculation that had made him a successful frontier captain. The smart thing to do would be to wait for the Galactic Council fleets to arrive with overwhelming force. But the Etherians would be dead long before that happened. Knox, what happens if we try a direct approach? Knox ran simulations on her tactical computer. Straight through the perimeter? We'd be facing concentrated fire from at least 12 platforms simultaneously. Our shields would last maybe 30 seconds. And if we tried to sneak around? The platforms have sensor coverage over the entire area. They'd detect us long before we could reach the Harmony's light. Rodriguez leaned forward. Captain, I've been studying their attack patterns. These platforms were designed to fight advanced civilizations, species that use sophisticated energy weapons and quantum manipulation. They're adapting to counter the kind of technology the Galactic Council uses. What's your point? They might not be prepared for our approach. We don't use sophisticated weapons. We use brute force and kinetic energy. Our missiles are just explosives with guidance systems. Our railguns fire chunks of metal at high speed. From their perspective, we're primitives. Liu Wei felt a smile cross his face. You're saying they might not know how to counter primitive weapons? It's possible. Their adaptation algorithms are designed for advanced threats. They might struggle with simple violence. The plan that formed in Liu Wei's mind would have horrified any Galactic Council strategist. Instead of careful preparation and overwhelming force, he decided on speed, surprise, and controlled chaos. All hands, battle stations, Liu Wei announced. Over the ship's communication system. We're going to punch through their perimeter, grab the Etherian ship, and drag it to safety. This is going to be rough. The crew began preparations that would have terrified alien observers. Rodriguez rerouted power from life support systems to boost their shields. Knox armed every weapon on the ship and prepared to fire everything simultaneously. Murphy plotted an escape route through a nearby asteroid field that no sane pilot would attempt. Dr. Clark prepared the medical bay for massive casualties, while trying not to think about the fact that if their plan failed, there would be no survivors to treat. Rodriguez, what's our power situation? Liu Wei asked. I've disabled half our safety systems and redirected power from non-essential systems. We can maintain maximum shields and weapons for about 15 minutes before we start cooking ourselves. 15 minutes should be enough, Liu Wei said. Knox, target the largest platform. We're going to announce our presence in the loudest way possible. The Defiant accelerated toward the defense network at maximum speed. The ship's engines roared with power that exceeded every safety parameter in the manual. Warning alarms sounded throughout the vessel, but the crew ignored them with the casual disregard for danger that had made humans infamous. The platforms detected the approaching ship immediately. Energy weapons that could dissolve matter at the quantum level swiveled to track the new threat. The first shots came within seconds of detection. Incoming fire, Knox announced. Multiple energy beams, exotic matter manipulation, and something that looks like controlled gravity waves. The Defiant's shields flared as the alien weapons struck. But instead of the devastating damage the platforms expected, the crude human shields held. The exotic energy weapons that could penetrate sophisticated alien defenses struggled against the brute force approach of human engineering. Shields holding at 60%, Rodriguez reported. The platforms are trying to adapt, but our shield generators work on completely different principles than anything they've encountered. Liu Wei grinned fiercely. That's because we build our shields like medieval armor, thick, redundant, and designed to absorb punishment rather than deflect it elegantly. The battle became a running fight as the Defiant tore through the perimeter. The platforms tried to predict the human ship's movements, but their targeting systems were designed for logical, predictable opponents. They could not account for a crew that was willing to fly through their own weapons' fire to reach their target. Knox returned fire. All weapons. The Defiant unleashed everything it had. Rail guns fired tungsten slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. Missile tubes launched nuclear warheads with simple guidance systems. Energy weapons that would have been considered primitive by galactic standards poured destructive force into the nearest platform. The platform's shields held against the energy weapons, but the kinetic projectiles and explosive warheads confused its defensive systems. The ancient artificial intelligence had never encountered opponents who mixed high-tech energy weapons with simple explosives and metal projectiles. Direct hit on Platform 7, Knox reported with satisfaction. Their shields are fluctuating. They're trying to adapt, but they don't know how to counter our weapons mix. The Defiant reached the inner perimeter and came within range of the Harmony's light. The Etherian ship was in worse condition than the sensors had indicated. Large sections of its crystalline hull had simply vanished, and the remaining structure was held together by emergency force fields. Adams, try to contact the Etherian ship, Lu Wei ordered. Harmony's light, this is the human vessel Defiant. We're here to get you out. The response came immediately, filled with static and desperation. Defiant, this is Captain Whispers of Dawn. We have lost main power, and our engines are offline. We cannot move under our own power. Understood. We're going to use magnetic grapples. To tow you out, prepare for rough handling. Lu Wei took personal control of the ship's docking systems as they approached the crippled Etherian vessel. The procedure was complicated by the fact that both ships were under constant fire from the surrounding platforms. Murphy, keep us moving. Don't let them get a solid lock on us. The navigator threw the ship into a series of evasive maneuvers that would have been impossible for a less robust vessel. The Defiant twisted and rolled through space, using its superior maneuverability to avoid the worst of the platform fire. The magnetic grapples extended from the Defiant's hull and locked onto the Harmony's light. The connection was solid, but now both ships were effectively dead in space, while the platforms repositioned for a concentrated attack. Grapples secure, Lu Wei announced. Now comes the hard part. Knox looked at her tactical display with growing alarm. Captain, the platforms are repositioning. They're moving to block every escape route. We're trapped. Lu Wei studied this formation and realized that the platforms had learned from their engagement. They had adapted their tactics to counter the human approach, using their superior numbers to create an inescapable cage around both ships. Rodriguez, how long can we hold out? Against this level of firepower? Maybe 5 minutes before our shields collapse completely. Dr. Clark looked up from her medical station with sudden excitement. Captain, I've been analyzing the platform. Behavior patterns. There's something important you need to know. What is it? These platforms were designed to fight rational opponents, species that would retreat when facing overwhelming odds. They expect enemies to value their own survival above all else. Lu Wei felt understanding dawn. But they've never fought humans before. Exactly. They keep positioning to block logical escape routes, but they can't predict or counter something they've never encountered, a species that would sacrifice themselves to save strangers. Knox looked up from her weapons console. Captain, what are you thinking? Lu Wei made the decision that would define the rest of the battle. We're not trying to escape. We're going to ram the largest platform and clear a path for the Harmony's light. The crew of the Defiant worked with desperate efficiency as their ship prepared for its final mission. Chief Engineer Rodriguez had her hands deep in the fusion reactor controls, making modifications that would turn their vessel into the most expensive missile in human history. Reactor overload sequence initiated, Rodriguez announced, sweat beading on her forehead. I'm bypassing every safety system we have. When we hit that platform, the explosion will be visible from 3 star systems away. Captain Lu Wei stood at the center of the bridge, watching his crew prepare for death with the calm professionalism that had made them legends among the frontier colonies. Not one person had asked to be transferred to the escape pods. Not one had questioned the decision to sacrifice themselves for strangers. How long until we reach ramming speed? Lu Wei asked. Navigator Jake Murphy checked his calculations. 4 minutes until optimal impact velocity. The Harmony's light will be in the blast radius, but if we time it right, the explosion should create a gap in the platform formation. Lieutenant Sarah Knox looked up from her weapons console. Captain, I'm reading something strange. The Harmony's light is trying to contact us, put them through. The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the Etherian ship. Captain Whispers of Dawn stood in what remained of her bridge, her translucent blue skin showing the stress patterns that meant she was experiencing emotions beyond anything in her species' normal range. "Captain Lu Wei," she said, her voice carrying a tone of wonder and confusion. "My crew has been monitoring your communications. We understand what you plan to do. We cannot comprehend why you would sacrifice yourselves for people you have never met." Lu Wei looked at the alien captain and tried to find words that could bridge the gap between species. "Because it's the right thing to do. Because someone has to answer when people call for help. But you will die," Whispers of Dawn said. "Your entire crew will die. We are strangers to you. We are not even the same species. This action brings you no benefit, no honor, no advantage." Lieutenant Commander Adams stepped forward. "Captain, if I may?" Lu Wei nodded, and Adams addressed the Etherian directly. "Captain Whispers of Dawn, we have learned that your species has not fought wars for 10,000 years. You have achieved peace and prosperity through careful planning and avoiding conflict." "This is correct," the Etherian replied. "Humans are different. We have fought wars throughout our history. We have seen what happens when good people do nothing while others suffer. We learned long ago that some things are more important than survival." Dr. Susan Clark joined the conversation from her medical station. "Captain Whispers of Dawn, what makes a civilization worth preserving? Is it the technology? The art? The philosophy?" The Etherian considered this. "I would say it is the accumulation of knowledge and the advancement of understanding. For humans, it's different," Clark continued. "We believe a civilization is worth preserving only if it's willing to help others. All the knowledge in the galaxy means nothing if you won't use it to save lives." Whispers of Dawn was quiet for a long moment. "Your species has been isolated for 2 centuries because the galaxy fears you. But perhaps we have been fearing the wrong thing." The conversation was interrupted by alarms throughout both ships. Knox checked her tactical display with growing alarm. "Captain, the platforms are doing something new. They're linking their power systems together." The main screen showed the ancient defense network reconfiguring itself. Energy flowed between the massive platforms, creating a web of power that dwarfed anything the current galaxy had achieved. The combined energy output was enough to destroy entire fleets. "They're preparing a coordinated attack," Knox continued. "If they fire all together, they could destroy both our ships instantly." Rodriguez looked up from her reactor controls. "Captain, we have a problem. The platforms are generating an interference field that's disrupting our reactor overload sequence. I can't maintain the chain reaction needed for the ramming attack." Lu Wei stared at the tactical display, watching as the ancient platforms systematically eliminated every option for escape or attack. The artificial intelligences had learned from the engagement and adapted their tactics to counter human unpredictability. "There has to be another way," Murphy said. "We didn't come this far to fail now." Dr. Clark studied the platform formations with growing excitement. "Wait, I think I see something. Captain, these platforms are ancient, millions of years old. They were designed to fight the wars of a dead civilization." "What's your point?" "They're operating on behavioral patterns from that era. Look at how they position themselves, how they coordinate their attacks. They're fighting the kind of war their creators expected to face." Liu Wei felt a spark of understanding. "But we're not fighting the kind of war they were designed for." "Exactly. They expect logical opponents who follow predictable military tactics. They can counter sophisticated technology and careful planning. But they've never faced something that doesn't make sense." Lieutenant Commander Adams suddenly understood. "Captain, what if we don't try to fight them at all? What if we do something completely illogical?" "Like what?" Knox looked at her weapons display with a wild idea forming. "Captain, What if we don't? Ram the largest platform? What if we ram the smallest one instead? The bridge crew stared at her in confusion. Murphy was the first to speak. That doesn't make tactical sense. The smallest platform poses the least threat. That's exactly why. It might work, Knox continued. The platforms are positioned to counter logical attacks against high-value targets. They're not prepared for an attack that serves no military purpose. Rodriguez caught on immediately. If we destroy the smallest platform, it creates a chain reaction in their formation. They'll have to reposition to maintain their defensive pattern. And during the repositioning, there will be a gap, Murphy added with growing excitement. A window where the Harmony's light could escape. Liu Wei looked at the tactical display with new eyes. The plan was completely insane from a military perspective. They would be sacrificing their ship and crew to destroy the least important target in the enemy formation. No rational military commander would ever consider such a tactic, which was exactly why it might work. Captain Whispers of Dawn, Liu Wei called to the Etherian ship. Are your engines still functional? We have minimal power, the alien captain replied. Enough for short-range maneuvering, but not enough to escape the platform formation. That's all we need. When we create the gap, you'll have maybe 30 seconds to get clear. Can you do it? Whispers of Dawn consulted with her crew, then nodded. We will be ready. Liu Wei looked around his bridge one last time. These people had followed him into the unknown, trusted his judgment, and now faced death with quiet courage. They represented everything the galaxy feared about humanity, their willingness to use violence, their disregard for logical planning, their tendency to act on emotion rather than careful calculation. But they also represented everything the galaxy needed, people who would answer a call for help, who would sacrifice everything for strangers, who believed that some things were more important than survival. All hands, this is the captain, Liu Wei announced over the ship's communication system. We're about to do something that makes no military sense whatsoever. We're going to ram the smallest platform in the formation and hope it creates enough chaos for the Harmony's light to escape. He paused, looking at his crew one more time. I want everyone to know that serving with you has been the greatest honor of my life. When the galaxy looks back on this day, they'll see a group of humans who proved that some things are worth dying. 4. Rodriguez completed the final modifications to the fusion reactors. Overload sequence ready, Captain. On your command. Knox armed the remaining weapons. All systems ready for final attack. Murphy plotted their course toward the smallest platform. Intercept course laid in. Adams sent a final message to Earth Command, explaining their actions and hoping that history would judge them kindly. Dr. Clark strapped herself into her medical station, knowing that in a few minutes there would be no patients to treat. Ramming speed, Liu Wei ordered. The Defiant turned toward the smallest platform and accelerated to maximum velocity, carrying 45 humans toward a death that would echo through galactic history. 6 months after the rescue at the Ancient Defense Network, the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime were packed with representatives from every known civilization. The debate that had been raging for weeks was finally coming to a vote that would change the galaxy forever. Ambassador Kelthera of the Vorthic Empire stood before the massive holographic display showing the battle footage from the crisis zone. The images were difficult for most species to watch, humans fighting impossible. Odds not for conquest or resources, but simply because others needed help. The evidence is clear, Kothara announced to the assembled delegates. We have been wrong about the humans for 2 centuries. The footage showed the final moments of the Defiant as it accelerated toward the smallest defense platform. The ancient, automated systems had tried to stop the attack, but their targeting algorithms could not predict or counter a tactic that made no logical sense. The human ship had crashed into the platform with the force of a small star, creating an explosion. That disabled 3 other platforms and opened the escape corridor. They destroyed themselves to save strangers, Kelthera continued. They violated their own government's isolation order and risked starting a galactic war because they heard a call for help. Council leader Zephyros activated another display, showing the aftermath of the battle. The Harmony's light had escaped through the gap created by the Defiant's sacrifice, carrying both the rescued Etherian crew and complete sensor recordings of humanity's heroic action. Captain Whispers of Dawn of the Harmony's Light will now address the council, Zephyros announced. The Etherian captain stepped forward, her translucent blue skin showing the stress patterns that indicated deep emotional distress. For a species that had known only peace for 10,000 years, witnessing the human sacrifice had been traumatic beyond description. Honored delegates, Whispers of Dawn began, I have spent the past 6 months trying to understand what happened in that battle. The humans knew they would die. They knew their sacrifice would bring them no benefit, no honor, no advantage. Yet they never hesitated. She paused, looking around the chamber at representatives from species that had debated for hours while her crew was dying. Captain Liu Wei told me that some things are more important than survival. At the time, I could not understand what he meant. My species has spent millennia avoiding conflict, choosing safety over risk, calculation over action. The chamber was completely silent as Whispers of Dawn continued. But I have learned something from the humans. They taught me that a civilization's worth is not measured by its technology or its philosophy, but by its willingness to help others. All our advanced knowledge means nothing if we will not use it to save lives. She activated a personal recording device, and the voice of Captain Liu Wei filled the chamber. It was the final transmission from the Defiant, sent just before the ramming attack. This is Captain Liu Wei of the human vessel Defiant. If anyone receives this message, know that we did not die in vain. We prove that when people call for help, someone will answer. We prove that the universe is not empty of hope. The recording continued with Liu Wei's final words. To the Galactic Council, we ask only that you judge humanity not by our weapons or our ships, but by our actions. We are not monsters. We are the people who come when you call. The chamber erupted in discussion as delegates from various species debated the implications. Some argued that the humans had been reckless and dangerous. Others pointed out that their recklessness had saved 300 lives that would have been lost if the galaxy had followed its normal careful procedures. Dr. Susan Clark, the only human survivor of the Defiant's crew, was invited to address the council. She had been in the Harmony's Light's medical bay when her ship was destroyed, helping treat injured Etherians while her crewmates flew toward their deaths. Honored delegates, Dr. Clark began, I have read the reports about humanity's reputation in the galaxy. You call us feral predators, dangerous and unpredictable. You fear our weapons and our ships. She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled aliens. But you have misunderstood what makes us dangerous. We are not violent because we enjoy destruction. We are willing to use violence to protect others. We build weapons not to conquer, but to defend. We take risks not because we are reckless, but because we know that sometimes the greatest risk is doing nothing. Clark activated a technical display showing human ship designs compared to those of other species. The contrast was striking. Alien vessels were elegant and efficient, while human ships looked like they were built for war. You see our ships and think we are preparing for conquest. But look closer. Every human vessel is designed with medical bays, rescue equipment, and cargo space for refugees. We build our ships like fortresses not to attack others, but to survive long enough to help them. She showed footage from the Defiant's final battle, pointing out details that the aliens had. Missed. Watch how my crewmates died. They could have used their weapons to clear an escape route for themselves. Instead, they chose a tactic that would save others at the cost of their own lives. This is not the behavior of predators. This is the behavior of protectors. The debate that followed lasted for days. Species after species offered their perspectives on the human question. Some argued that humanity's isolation should continue, that their unpredictability made them too dangerous to integrate into galactic society. But others pointed out the uncomfortable truth that the crisis had revealed. When faced with real danger, the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had been paralyzed by their own caution and fear. The turning point came when Ambassador Thylix of the Silicon Collective, whose species had been among the most vocal opponents of ending the quarantine, stood to address the council. "My fellow delegates," Thylix said, their metallic form flowing into a shape that indicated deep thought. "We have spent 2 centuries believing that we were protecting the galaxy from the humans. But perhaps we were protecting ourselves from our own inadequacy." The chamber fell silent as Thylix continued. "The humans answered a call for help that we ignored. They risked everything to save strangers while we debated and calculated. They proved that our advanced technology and peaceful philosophy mean nothing if we will not use them to help others." Thylix activated a display showing galactic emergency response statistics. The numbers were disturbing. In the past century, the average response time to distress calls had increased by 400% as bureaucracy and caution had replaced quick action. "We have become so afraid of making mistakes that we have forgotten how to act at all." The humans remind us that sometimes the greatest mistake is doing nothing. The final vote was closer than many had expected, but it passed by a significant margin. The human quarantine was officially ended, and humanity was invited to join the Galactic Council as a full member species. But the Council went further than anyone had anticipated. They extended an unprecedented invitation, asking humans to serve as the galaxy's emergency response force. They wanted the species that would answer SOS calls when everyone else was calculating whether it was safe to help. The response from Earth was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of humans volunteered for the new Galactic Emergency Response Fleet. They came from every walk of life: former military personnel, civilian rescue workers, frontier colonists, and ordinary citizens who wanted to make a difference. Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of the new vessel Defiant II, named in honor of the ship that had started it all. Her crew included volunteers from 12 different species, all of whom had requested to serve alongside the humans who had proved that some things were worth dying for. The ship itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering. It combined human durability and firepower with alien technology and efficiency. The medical bay was designed by Etherian doctors. The engines were built using Vorthok engineering, and the sensors incorporated Silicon Collective technology. But at its heart, the Defiant II was still a human ship, built to survive the impossible and crewed by people who would not hesitate to risk everything for strangers. "Captain," her communication officer reported, "we're receiving a priority distress call from the Rigel sector. A colony ship is under attack by pirates. Local authorities estimate 6 hours before they can respond." Captain Morgan looked at her. Mixed crew of humans and aliens, all of whom had volunteered for the dangerous duty of galactic emergency response. "How long to reach them?" 4 hours at maximum speed, her navigator replied. Morgan smiled, remembering the words of her predecessor. "Then we'll be there in time. All hands, prepare for emergency deployment." As the Defiant II jumped to hyperspace, racing toward another impossible rescue, the galaxy finally understood what the humans had been trying to tell them for 2 centuries. They were not the monsters to be feared. They were the heroes to be called when hope seemed lost. In the end, the feral humans had taught the galaxy the most important lesson of all. The true civilization is not measured by how advanced you are, but by how willing you are to help others when they need it most.